What's up, fellas? And today is NBA Trade Machine Day. And this one, we're going to be taking a look at some trades that you guys have sent me, as well as some trades that I have come up with for John Collins of the Atlanta Hawks. There's been some reports, some rumors going around about the possibility that the Hawks could be trading Collins. So, of course, it's topical to talk about some possible fake trades for John Collins of the Atlanta Hawks. But really quickly, before we get started, if you're new here, what's up? My name is Tucker. I upload NBA content on this channel twice a day, every single day. So if you're looking for the most consistent NBA content on YouTube, you found it. This is a great place to be. Consider subscribing to the channel. You can also leave a like rating on the video as well if you're enjoying it. Helps get the video out to more people on YouTube. And if you want to hang out with me outside of these videos, you can check out the link tree in the description below. It has every single social media that I have in that link. With those things said, let's go ahead and start with the trade machine. And this first one is one that I came up with myself. And it is the Hawks receiving Marvin Bagley and a lottery protected first from the Boston Celtics for 2021. The Kings receiving Tony Snell's basically a big expiring contract, John Collins and Carson Edwards, and the Celtics getting Harrison Barnes and taking him into that big trade exception that they have. So let's go through this team by team. So for Atlanta, the reasoning behind trading John Collins is he's expecting a big contract. It's very likely he's going to get a significant contract offer in this offseason. There's a lot of teams that have cap space, and even though they have the right to match anything that is offered to him because he is a restricted free agent, considering some of the other investments they already made in the previous offseason, doesn't make sense to pay John Collins $20 to $25 million a year when you've already got Gallinari and Bogdanovich on the roster making significant money, Clint Capella making significant money, and a max Trae Young extension coming up here in the next couple of seasons. They've done this before with someone like Taurean Prince, who they traded away before they would have had to pay him. And now the mindset is, yes, Collins is a very good player, but maybe it's not quite time for them to invest on this level for Collins. So instead, you get another talented front court player in Marvin Bagley that obviously is not as good as Collins, but has plenty of potential, and you don't have to pay him for a little bit. You're getting that first round pick as well to help you continue to, build the youth, the core of this team, or possibly make a move with that asset down the road. It's not a great return for the level of player that Collins is, but that's going to be something that's going to be a continuing theme throughout this video because of the free agency stuff. It makes things a little bit weird, not only in terms of the team receiving Collins, but also the idea of having to pay him still exists for a team, which is the Kings here, rather than Atlanta as well. So that's kind of the mindset there for Atlanta. For the Kings, you're getting a player in Collins that is significantly better than Marvin Bagley, and you're getting out of the Harrison Barnes contract, which is significant for Sacramento. And the reason why Harrison Barnes to the Celtics has been rumored is because they do have a significant payroll issue, and they do have some bigger contracts on this roster that they need to unload, Harrison Barnes being one of them. So yes, it does suck to give up on Marvin Bagley so early in his career when he does still have a significant amount of potential, but you get rid of the Barnes contract, and John Collins is a really, really good young player. You pay him in the offseason, and then you move forward from there, and then, you get Carson Edwards, who could be something as well. And for Boston, they're here because Harrison Barnes can't be unloaded on the Hawks because his contract is too big. Collins only makes, $3.5 million this year because he hasn't signed a new extension yet. So Harrison Barnes goes to Boston in that big Gordon Hayward trade exception that they made. Gives them a nice, wing that can defend a little bit, can shoot a little bit, provides them some size, some versatility, and just another plug and play guy within their lineup. And I think it's a really nice addition for Boston, especially when you're looking at this season specifically, and all you're giving up is Carson Edwards and that lottery protected first. And of course, you're using a significant part of the trade exception here as well. So at the end of the day, the Hawks are getting back Bagley in a first in exchange for Collins and an expiring contract in Tony Snell. You don't have to pay Collins now, and you don't have a one-for-one replacement, of course, in Bagley, but you have someone that could potentially develop into a really nice player there in Atlanta. The Kings are giving up on Bagley early, but they know that John Collins is a really good player, and they're getting out of the Harrison Barnes money, and Boston gets another nice piece to add to their rotation without really having to give up a ton. So that's kind of the mindset here for this deal. Next up now is a trade that was sent to me over on Twitter from Phil, and he says that Atlanta would receive Paul Millsap and Michael Porter Jr. in exchange for John Collins, Kevin Huerter, and Cam Reddish. So the mindset here, if you're Denver, is you've been a good team this year and you're counting on Michael Porter Jr. to do some things for you, but at times he just isn't around or just isn't as sure of a thing. I think it's safe to say that in terms of how good they are as NBA players right now, John Collins is a better NBA player than Michael Porter Jr. And you can talk about the long term, you can talk about the potential, but if you're looking for an immediate upgrade, John Collins would be one for Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, not the same kind of players, but both in terms of availability as well as ability, that's kind of the upgrade here. You're also getting some other young pieces in Cam Reddish and Kevin Huerter that could be really good down the road as well. Meanwhile, Atlanta is getting Paul Millsap, who helps them this season, but the big prize here, of course, is Michael Porter Jr., who you don't have to pay for another, I believe, 2 full seasons, and could end up being the best player in this trade when it's all said and done a couple years from now. Now, this one is a little bit weird for me looking at it just because it feels like a really odd swap of a handful of young players. And when both teams really sit down and look at it, they might just rather keep the guys that they have. Like, I don't think that they're necessarily unhappy with the young players that they have that are involved here, whether that be MPJ, Collins, Huerter, or Reddish. So it seems a little bit odd that they would be swapping all these young guys when they seem to like the young players they have. It's more so a contract thing with Collins, and I understand the difficulty of coming up with a Collins trade because of the salary implications of that. And as a result, I appreciate you sending the trade in, but I'm not confident that either team is overly excited about this. I think Atlanta would be really excited to get Michael Porter Jr., but when you're considering giving up 3 young players for 1, that calls into question whether that's worth it to me or not. And then in terms of the fit, if I'm Denver, I'd rather have Porter Jr. on the wing rather than Collins in the front court, despite the fact that he is a talented front court player. Jokic already kind of has that front court scoring role locked down. So those would be my question marks, but I appreciate you sending it in regardless. Next up now is a trade in which the Celtics get John Collins. Again, the Celtics involved in a trade here in exchange for Carson Edwards, Aaron Naismith, a second-round pick, and a first-round pick. So again, Boston is looking for a really, really nice front court fit here, right? You've got the wings and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Kemba can score still in the backcourt, is having some issues, but ideally, Kemba returns to form at some point. You've got some options at the 5 spot, but of course, Collins can play up a position if you need him to, but really, he can play the 4, the 5, he can score, he can shoot, and it's just a really, really good offensive fit there in Boston. And in terms of your current team, you're not really giving up a ton. Yes, a future first, yes, a future second, Naismith, who could be good, and Carson Edwards, who could be good, but in terms of this season, this is a significant upgrade to the roster for Boston. You bring back John Collins in the offseason, and you've got him, and you've got Tatum and Brown long term, and that's just kind of your group. That's your core moving forward. No matter what happens with Kemba Walker, no matter what happens at the 5 spot, you've got the 3 middle parts of your lineup really locked in here for Boston. In terms of a player standpoint, in terms of an asset standpoint for this season, this is a no-brainer for them. You're really not giving up a ton. You're not expecting your 2022 first-round pick to be anything significant. And at this point, neither Naismith or Edwards have really solidified themselves as a really significant part of the team. Maybe they will be down the road, but in terms of right now, it's not really that big of a deal to move either of these guys. Now, the thing that I would question would be the fit between Collins, Tatum, and Brown, because even though they're all very talented, I don't love the idea of not it's so much easier to kind of just play Tatum and Brown wherever you want to when you don't have a guy in Collins that you feel like you need to start at the 4, right? So right now, depending on the matchup, they can play a little bit bigger with Tatum or Brown at the 4, or they can play a little bit smaller with them playing the 2 and the 3. Whereas if you have Collins now, he has to start and he kind of has to be the 4. And if you really get into a weird matchup situation, it in a weird way, it limits your versatility in a way that I'm not super excited about. And they've already got a good amount of offense between those 2 guys and Kemba. So adding a player that is for the most part all offense in Collins doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I like the value, the fit, however, I'm questioning. And for Atlanta, you do get the pick, you get the couple of young players, but you take a bit of a step back with this current team, which given the front office and the coaching situation here, meaning if they don't make the playoffs this year, those guys are probably getting fired. I don't think they're looking to take a step back in this significant of a way in a Collins trade, but I appreciate you sending it in. Next up now is a trade from Jason, and of course you knew we had to get a Bradley Beal trade in here, right? So Atlanta gets Beal in exchange for Bogdanovich, Collins, Reddish, and a first-round pick. And some people pointed this out in the replies. Given kind of the climate of, star trades and player movement in this moment, 1 first-round pick is not going to be enough here for Bradley Beal. Even given that Bogdanovich is a good player, John Collins is a good player, Cam Reddish could be a really good player down the road, and you're getting 1 first here. If you're Atlanta, you are gonna need to give up like at least 2 to 3 first-round picks. That's just where we're at right now with these big-time superstar trades. And make no mistake about it, Bradley Beal is a superstar. Now, the fit between Trae Young and Bradley Beal in the backcourt is questionable. Would Bradley Beal sign long-term? There's all those different questions, right? But strictly from an asset standpoint, you know, Atlanta would have to give up a little bit more here. Now, if it came down to it and Washington decided they wanted to move Bradley Beal, I would imagine that Atlanta would be one of the first teams that they would call, because they have, as I mentioned in the previous trade, an incentive to level up their roster to keep their job if you're the coach or the GM, and they have young assets and players that they can trade. And if you do pair Beal and Trae Young together, that would create one of the better offensive backcourt pairings in the entire league. So certainly there's incentive here. Certainly there's the ability to make a trade given the young assets, whether that be Bogdanovich, Collins, Reddish, Herter, whoever else is on the roster, and then the ability to give up future firsts as well. But this specific trade, I'm not sure works 100% well for what Washington wants to do. But I understand the concept, I understand the mindset, and I appreciate you sending it in. And the last up now, I got a little bit weird with this one, because again, I don't necessarily think that Atlanta is super excited about taking a step back here in a Collins trade, given the fact that, you know, these guys might get canned at the end of the year. So in this one, they're taking a bit of a leap. So they call up Houston, they're like, hey, we've got a guy that we're not sure we want to keep at the end of the season as restricted free agent. You've got a player that fits really well with our roster in Victor Oladipo, and he's an unrestricted free agent. Let's make something happen here. So we'll send you the expiring of Tony Snell. We'll send you John Collins. We'll send you 2 future seconds. Give us Victor Oladipo, and we'll call it a day. So the mindset here is Oladipo is about as ideal of a backcourt partner for Trae Young as you're going to find and actually be able to attain. Can really defend when healthy, you know, is good on or off the ball, and just allows you to do a lot of different things with Trae Young that isn't all just let him, you know, run every ball screen every time down the floor, right? And it's unfortunate to have to give up Collins and get, you know, a little bit older here with Oladipo, who's 28 or 29 and coming off of an injury, still trying to kind of round into form. But the ideal version of Oladipo was really good with Trae Young, and you're kind of swapping, you know, a restricted guy that you're not sure fits super well long-term with an unrestricted guy, but a guy that you know fits. And the risk here for Atlanta is you don't know if Victor Oladipo is going to want to resign, or you don't know what the cost would be, or you don't know if he's going to be really good for the next couple of seasons. But if you're okay with accepting the fact that maybe you're just losing Collins here for the opportunity to get an ideal backcourt partner for Trae Young, maybe you make this move. If you're Houston, you're looking at the situation and you're thinking, if we swapped it, like in a you know, a magical scenario, we can go back and we can look at the Harden trade, and rather than getting Oladipo, you know, you get John Collins and a couple of second-round picks. Would you have taken the Harden trade at the time? Would Collins have been a good enough foundational core piece for this roster that you wouldn't have needed to grab Oladipo? I think it's a question worth asking. Now, is there a bit of a fit concern here between, you know, Collins and Christian Wood? Is that going to be a good enough defensive front court moving forward? Yes, those are question marks. But if I'm Houston and I'm concerned about my ability to retain Victor Oladipo, I would rather get not only the younger player in John Collins, but also the player that I have restricted free agency rights over, that I know for a guarantee, if I'm willing to pay for John Collins, I can keep him in the offseason, of which I have no guarantee for Victor Oladipo. So I think this is something that each side would certainly take a look at. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of the first video of today, and I thank you guys very much for watching. As always, if you want to send in trades to me, the best way to do that is on Twitter or in the Discord. Both those links are in the description below. I'll be putting out a video I'll be putting out a video later today as well, the second video of the day, talking about some Kevin Durant stuff, how crazy his season has been to this point, and how he's really, you know, kind of making history with this season so far for the Brooklyn Nets. So stay tuned for that. With all those things said, though, I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. With all those things said, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.